Well, welcome to 10 Minute Record Reviews, episode 74. And today we're going to talk about Elis Regina's release from 1969, Como Porque. And this is the original 1969 Brazilian pressing, which I'm kind of pleased about. It was kind of a trip to actually get hold of it because I ended up corresponding with a guy in Brazil who was quite happy to go and search record stores for me there secondhand. And he came up with this one, which was quite a find, so that was great. This was her 13th album. She was only 24 at the time, which, again, amazing to have 13 records already under your belt at that point. It's Música Popular Brasileira, or MPB, or Brazilian Popular Music, which is a distinct style of music from the kind which had been dominating Brazilian airwaves for the first half of the 60s, which was, of course, Bossa Nova. And Elis herself, who is probably Brazil's most famous chanteuse, is, if not single-handedly, at least significantly responsible for the introduction of MPB as a musical style in the 1960s, breaking the stranglehold that Bossa Nova had on the popular music which was being played at the time. So what is MPB? Well, it's kind of a catch-all term for music which came after Bossa Nova, after 1965, less jazz influenced and more influenced by rock and pop of other Western music at the time. That said, this album has a whole bunch of diverse influences. It has some MPB, but it also has a number of songs which are quite clearly Bossa Nova songs or Bossa Nova influenced. It's an eclectic record, it's an excellent record, and it occurs at a real point of Elis's maturation as a singer, as she moved through the 60s from kind of a teen phenom to kind of a breakout period as a TV star, to really honing her craft as a serious musician towards the end of the 1960s. And this is kind of at that point of flourishing of her new mature style, which was to dominate her recorded output in the 1970s. So Elis Regina was born in 1945 in Porto Alegre, in Brazil. She has a talent from an early age as a singer. She signs a record contract at age 13. She actually records her first record and releases it when she's 16 in 1961, and she becomes a teen sensation. She moves through that kind of phase to her big break, which is occurring on a televised music festival in 1965, where she sings a song called Arrastão, which is a composition of a couple of other famous Brazilian musicians, Vinicius de Moraes and Edu Lobo. And her performance is captivating for the whole nation. It's slightly controversial because she adopts this kind of Christ-like pose at the very conclusion of the song. Anyway, makes her a national figure. She then has fairly major roles hosting musical variety shows in Brazil over the next few years, keeps on releasing records, and in her role in these programs is largely responsible for launching the careers of a bunch of other people who were to become very well-known Brazilian musicians, particularly in the 1970s, like Milton Nascimento and Gilberto Gil and several other people. So even at the age of 20 or 21, she's become an institution in Brazil, and by the late 60s, she's the most famous singer in the country. Her overall musical high point probably comes in 1974 when she does a duet album with Tom Jobim, the apex of all things musical Brazilian for the last 15 years, called Elis and Tom. And that's an album, if you haven't heard, really do make an effort to hear it or pick it up because it just is fantastic. This album, Como Porque, which came out in 1969, occurs at the point where, as I mentioned earlier, she has moved from being a teen phenom to being a TV star to really starting to hone the qualities of her singing. She's getting much better production values on her records, and this is a real flourishing of her newly mature singing style. She's got some Brazilian heavyweights here in the studio with her. She's got Armando Pitiliani, who produced a significant range of Bossa Nova and MPB records for Philips over quite an extended period. On guitar and also doing arrangements is Roberto Maniscal, the composer in his own right, and she is also drawing on the writing of pretty much a who's who of Brazilian popular music composers over the last 15-20 years. Jobim, actually, strangely, is kind of the odd person out. Almost everybody else that you consider to be a notable composer is included in the songwriting credits of this record. It starts off with a 2-for-1 song. It's Aquarela do Brasil added to Nega do Cabelo Duro, two compositions by different composers. And this is basically about as bossa nova as the album gets. There's a string section here as well. Followed by Osano by Egberto Gismonti. Osano has essentially two kind of motifs to it. One is a very bossa-like bass, guitar, drums, and gentle singing part. And then there's a more belty part, which sounds for all the world like a Bond theme. Both of these repeat a couple times. She handles both very well, and the transition between both very well. That's followed by a Milton Nascimento song, Veracruz. This is a good song. I don't know if this is the best arrangement. I feel there's kind of too much going on here. There's strings, there's samba percussion, everything seems a little bit manic, and maybe less could have been more, I think. But the album was quickly redeemed by the next song, which is Casa Forte. This is a fantastic song. It's by Edu Lobo. It is one of those tunes which could easily, and it might have done, actually I don't know, but could easily have had a second life during the acid jazz fad. Any crate digging DJ worth his or her salt, I think, would have done really well to pull this one out. It's got a fantastic beat and really quite infectious. Elis' singing is great, and she's double tracked here. It's a really good effect. This is just a really good song. But for my money, the best song on side one is the last song on side one, which is Canto do Osania, which is a song by Baden Powell and Vinicius, two venerable composers of bossa nova, basically. This is smoky, sexy, seductive as hell. It's got a wonderful delivery by Elis. It's got great piano and bass. It's got a wonderful and I think very tasteful use of the string section. And I have to say the string orchestration on the album overall is excellent. So this is just a wonderful piece of music and a great way to end the side. So side two starts with Giro, which is very much an MPB song, not a bossa nova song. I think it's just okay, frankly. Put it in the category of a pretty good pop tune, no more, no less. But Elis' vocal delivery is fantastic. And then it's a Menescal number. Now, Roberto Menescal has been doing a lot of the arrangements of, not the orchestral arrangements, but the group arrangements for this album. And it's funny that I think a lot of the other arrangements are actually a lot better than the one he actually pulls off for his own composition here. It's a great samba. It's got that classic rhythm section that you would associate with that. But I find other parts of it, particularly the brass, a little bit manic. I think maybe, you know, having an orchestral arranger and a group arranger on the same album is probably too much of a good thing, and this is kind of where some of the Too Many Cooks kind of spills over a little bit. Followed by Andensa, which is Kami's song, and this is a song on which Elis is absolutely superb. It's really nicely arranged, and for me, I hear this and I instantly hear a connection to a band from 20 years later, or 30 years later, a Stereolab. I don't think the influence could be any clearer. This frankly could be a Stereolab song. It's a really great song. It's really infectious. One of the best tunes in the record. And then we have a song from a French movie, Les Parapluies de Cherbourg. And the song is actually entitled on the album, Les Parapluies de Cherbourg. But in fact, that's not the title of the song. The song is actually Récit de Cassard, but it is from the same film. Very pretty song, very pretty vocal delivery. Then it's back to bossa nova with Samba de Pergunta, or Question Samba. This is quite down-tempo. It's a very Astrid Gilberto-like delivery. I really found it really quite appealing, I have to say. And then finally, another song by Edu Lobo, Memorias de Marta Saré. This is up-tempo. Kind of feels almost like a big traffic jam. I'm not actually that wild about the arrangement on this closing number. It's like the impression I feel is like I'm on a big, fast-moving crosstown bus. Elis does well, but I don't think, as I say, the arrangement does her any favors. This had actually been done by Maria Medaglia a year earlier. I frankly think a little bit better than here. So, overall, this is a very good album, very good to excellent, by a confident singer who's really starting to hit her stride. Again, she's in her mid-20s at this point, but she has a decade of performing under her belt. And this really shows her mastery of her technique, of transitions between sort of the light and the shade in different parts of songs is really professional. And this album really opens the door to the next decade of her work, which was of consistently high quality and well worth picking up, well worth listening to. For me, this is 4.5 out of 5 stars.